So there's a lot of people who don't know the whole story, my whole story. I posted 68 videos, but I think I've never really gone back to the beginning. The beginning starts, I don't know, 20 years ago or more. I should probably get the dates going on. I remember I was in college, and Colorado Mountain College, and I was really nervous in a speech class, and I thought, oh, it's just because I'm nervous to speak in front of a class, but really what was going on was that I had a hyperactive thyroid. That was one of the first indications that I had anything going on with my system. I went to Boulder. They discovered I didn't have Graves' disease, and it was simply just a hyperactive thyroid, and they put me on a beta blocker, which is something to lower my heart rate, because my heart rate was like every day I was doing a marathon, basically. And when I went to bed at night, I would fall asleep in one position and wake up in that same position. Like 14 hours later. Like I was sleeping solid for more than 14 hours a night. So that's the first indication something was wrong. It did prompt me to go, I was working for Outward Bound at the time, and it prompted me to go, I remember now, I was working as a logistics coordinator out of Leadville, Colorado for Outward Bound, and the only reason we found it is because they made me do a physical, and they're like, you have this hyperactive thyroid. So one time a mountaineer came, one of their course people were sick with the high altitude sickness, and so my job was to drive them down to Denver from 10,000 feet in Leadville. And we stopped in, I think it was maybe Breckenridge, and there was a little tiny place to stop and read, and little, food, and there was a book on Chinese medicine. For whatever reason, I sat in the comfy chair. I opened it up, and it totally opened up my world to hot sicknesses and cold sicknesses and understanding that. So immediately I got off of birth control pills. I stopped all spicy food because the hyperactive thyroid was a heat sickness. So I began to understand that. And that was the beginning of my journey, was right there. And understanding that. And I was pretty ferocious in figuring it out. Within 1 month, I was off my medication. I never had to go back on it. My thyroid was normal ever after that. No doctors were curious. No one asked me anything. No one followed up with me because, no one really cares. But I was pretty ecstatic. So this was great. So I continued to watch my thyroid. In the meantime, I became quite an avid rock climber, like really addicted. Like my whole life was rock climbing. And I also found massage school. So once again, I, was on a health journey. I had my first introduction into all kinds of things, understanding light and the importance of natural light and the circadian rhythm, the importance of what you put on your skin. And that was back in 1996. So that shows you how long I've been aware of a lot of these things. I'm an excellent sleeper. I really follow the circadian rhythm for 25 years, since 1996. I've been very diligent about, I naturally am just tired when it's dark, and I wake up when it's light. It's very natural for me. And I spend an incredible amount of time outdoors, which I did not realize I do realize the positive benefits, because I always went out. I I had to stay sane and normal. It's a natural calling for me to be outside. So, through climbing, I realized I started to have injuries. So one of them, I was on this wicked hard 510, first time doing a 510 climb, and I ripped my shoulder out. I went to the acupuncturist in Boulder. He was this Dr. Pao, this Chinese dude in this like warehouse that smelled like Chinese herbs, and there was no real rooms and nice music. It was just like totally Chinese style. I remember he put the needles in me and I passed out. And when I woke up, in his arms, he had this like thumb right in underneath my nose here, wiggling it. And I was like, dude, woke up in this Chinese dude's arm with his thumb like stuck in my, I'm like, ah. And he says, car? I'm like a vehicle? Car? Yeah, car. You like car, no gas. I'm like, okay. I'm like a car with no gas. Got it. No, my shoulder hurts. I got up, got a paper bag full of nasty herbs that he told me to boil and drink, and I left. And I proceeded to cry the whole way home from Boulder to Fort Collins, just bawling my head off. Couldn't stop crying, like sobbing. Hello, maybe there's some emotional components going on. Yeah. So I whipped up those nasty mud, whatever those herbs were, drank it down. Brought my girlfriend to go see Pao, who had asthma. And we decided to start doing the no wheat thing for her because she was realizing that wheat would cause her asthma things. Well, I was kind of not on that program because I was like, I don't have asthma. But little did I know that I had a lot of joint problems. But back then, 20 years ago, there was no connection of grains and joint problems. I thought it was because I was climbing so hard. Then later, as I got into massage therapy, my hands had a lot of problems. I started to mountaineer. I was a heavy-duty skier. I skied a lot, like a lot. So I attributed all my pain to, the injuries. I flew off jumps, blew my knee out, my low back, and life moves along. Always thinking it's the heart. And then I got into gardening. So I'm hauling these huge 25, 30, 40, 50 pound bags of manure around, shoveling a lot, weeding, just, which for me, I thought I was just doing lots of work that was helpful to my massage practice, my climbing practice. I was pretty strong for a climber, not like some of my friends, because I was hanging out with these uber climbers. So I was never like totally excellent like them, but yeah. So in the meantime, I decided to explore being a vegetarian. Kind of worked. Kind of sent me down the carb thing. I found myself eating a piece of bread loaded with butter and jelly at night to go to sleep, which was okay. I didn't really know that to be a problem. My emotions were kind of all over the place, but I just thought that was normal relationship things, not realizing that if I would have gotten the proper blood work, that was affecting my body. My periods were heinous. so heinous that in college I passed out in chemistry class. The ambulance came, brought me, and they said, just take some ibuprofen and go home. You just can't handle pain. So I'll tell you, 20 years later, when I got pregnant, because I didn't get pregnant till I was 35, and when labor started, I was like, is this all you got? Like, we got pain, and then it goes away? Like, intervals? And yes, by the time, 3 days of that happened, and, it was, yeah, anyway, if you've given birth, But I was shocked at the level of pain that I had been dealing with for 20 years. And I listened to the doctors and thought that I did not know how to handle pain. What I didn't realize is that handling the pain was how I skied so hard. It's how I was in the outdoors. I just sucked it up to hang out with the dudes, because back then a lot of women didn't do a lot of outdoor stuff. So I had to work really hard to keep up. So I sucked it up, not knowing, and the implications of that are pretty severe. So I just want to put that little note in. Another factor that happened is after I gave birth and I had my normal periods come back, the first period I was in tears because I couldn't believe how amazing it was. Meaning normal, not painful, just a normal amount of feeling to do the normal period. I mean, I had sensations, but it wasn't excruciating. I was so shocked. My husband is still tired. I'm in menopause now, so not happening, but I mean, it was every month I'd be like, I can't believe what just happened. So what I think is that I had endometriosis that was undiagnosed. They say once you give birth, that sometimes that will alleviate the symptoms, and I had normal periods, and I was shocked that I've been suffering, went to so many doctors, was told it's all in my head for all those years. I still want to cry. So there's grief in me from that. And I know many, 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 many women who go through this. Maybe not as severe as me, or some are more, So I'm very happy about, people becoming aware, and women are now demanding, that attention is really paid to them, and it's a really big deal. So another factor, I grew up in Colorado. My dad's a coal miner, so I got to go down, and he loves to go around, so I got to go down in these old gold mines, and I got to go in the coal mines, and I've been backpacking in like the Weminuche Wilderness and all over the Colorado, and there is a lot of evidence that a lot of the mines that are open mines, the dust in the air is carrying a ton of heavy metals. So when I got tested for heavy metals, I tested in the 100th percentile for uranium. So does my son, Xander. I'm in the 75th percentile for silver, thorium, germanium. Yeah, and there's several other weird things in there, and a little bit of lead. So I know that my exposure of heavy metals is part of my issue. In the meantime, back when I was in 7th or 8th grade, they call it the kissing disease, but I got mono. which is the Epstein-Barr virus, which everybody says just go home, drink, eat some chicken soup, sleep it off, and you'll be fine. Nobody understands all the stages of Epstein-Barr, and if you're exposed to heavy metals and other contaminants and you're overworking your system, what's going to happen. So that's a biggie too that was never ever addressed. So I just want to let you guys know that I've been to over probably 30 conventional doctors and over 20 natural type doctors, naturopaths, acupuncturists, herbalists, all this over the period from when I got first diagnosed with my hyperactive thyroid when in my 20s until my diagnosis with cancer. I was not the person that was like, oh, I'm surprised I have cancer. I have been searching. I have been literally screaming. I have hired and spent thousands upon thousands of dollars before getting cancer, trying to solve the mystery. A lot of people talk about, intuition, and I followed that. A lot of that. But the trigger, in the end, I was barely on the edge of staying healthy. Like I was doing enough to just stay out of the cancer world. But after the birth of my second son, he was in a very traumatic burn accident. We were on Flight for Life when he was 1 year old. This was 10 years ago. And we went from Durango straight to the burn center in Denver. I lived there for an unknown amount of time. Pretty severe, was in on the 11% of his body. Doctors put the fear of God into me and everybody around me. When the nutritionist came in, she was like, oh, I actually educated her on nutrition in the hospital. I never left him, ever. And as a mother, here's where it is. You'll give everything you've got. And it was very, very difficult. I don't think I'll ever get over it. Having your 1-year-old nursing while he's being injected with morphine and the nurse is unwrapping his leg. And it's just raw flesh and they have to scrub it. Over and over. Every couple days for weeks and weeks and weeks. The one thing that helped me get through that was yoga. I couldn't even do a practice anymore. I was so incredibly exhausted. And I didn't know what PTSD is. Why would I know? I just came from this beautiful mountaineering, climbing, skiing life in heaven in Durango, Colorado, where things, had some hard things going on, but nothing like your child being burnt and then moving to Phoenix. I decided to move to Phoenix to be with my husband, thinking that at that point, if I did not be with him, if I couldn't be with him, it was a make or break for our marriage. and moving away from my community, moving to a big, dirty city, and dealing with no sleep because I'd have to rewrap his wounds every couple hours for months. Was just enough to put me over the edge. So, living in Phoenix and Tucson, I was no longer hiking mountain peaks. So I was no longer jumping in cold water, sweating, like doing saunas and hot springs were out. I was not doing hot springs anymore, cold plunges anymore, which I had no idea. The power of the hot and cold on my body is what kept me sane. But I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I knew, but I didn't know the full impact of keeping me healthy with the genetics that I've been given and the stress and everything that I was under. So I've always had, when I was breastfeeding, I had mastitis in my breast, on the left breast. And I've been watching that for a long time. I was like, what is that? They're like, oh, it's scar tissue. Don't worry about it. Okay, cool. It's just from the mastitis. Okay, so then, a couple years go by and I'm getting ultrasounds and checking it out. And there's a little beady ball. I went and they said, oh, it's a cyst. It's black. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Okay, so then another couple years go by. I decided to do thermography. The thermography totally passed me clean, clear colors. This is not cancer. You're totally cool. There's no blood flow going to it. It's because my body was actually trying to encapsulate it and was doing its job. So it didn't indicate anything. So yes, that was one of my mistakes. I then went to a naturopath doctor here in Tucson, and I did get a mammogram. And he said the most dangerous thing to do is to get a biopsy because then it might spread something around your body, but we don't know what it is. So, just you're the most healthy person I've seen. You're fine. I'm working with people who have all these weird chronic things. That's what all the doctors say. They look at me and they say, you look great. You're thin. You're athletic. You eat organic. You're open. You seem, really healthy. Meanwhile, I'm losing my hair like crazy. I'm stressed out to the max. I know something's not right. And nobody's listening. So I'm trying to do my own things. In the meantime, my sons have the worst cavities on the planet. And I'm like, what's going on? Because I'm the mom that's the Nazi toothbrusher. Like, I am the Nazi, I don't mean to use that terminology. Should not use that term. I am the diligent mother. We're going to brush our teeth every night. Every single night. We are going to make sure your teeth are clean. We are not drinking soda. We barely do sugar and cereals like my kids' diet. Compared to the standard American diet, the SAD diet, was stellar. I'll just say it was stellar. All organic, but it was heavy in grains. So they're both showing signs of not being well. And the tooth thing, kids getting injections and tooth abscesses and tooth pull. I mean, the tears and the horror at the dentist. I can't even tell you. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, I found the natural cures to cavities, and the guy's like, look, you need to eat organ meats. You need to go back, take grains out of your life other than sourdough bread. Take all cereals out. So I did. And I did it with my sons, and we healed their cavities from the inside out. I have proof. Freaking crazy. And in the meantime, I'm doing this same food diet, and my joints are feeling better. I'm getting more energy. I'm not as anxiety ridden anymore. I'm starting to find my creativity again. And I'm also realizing that I was suffering from PTSD, and I got some help with that, with some EMDR. Starting to hike again, I started to address some of my issues. And I had a new exciting venture of hemp farming with my dad, growing some high CBD cannabis plants on his field, on his alfalfa field in Colorado. So I was looking for any opportunity to get out of Arizona and back to Colorado. And I love to grow things like that. I haven't had a garden for, I don't know, it was 7 years, because it's so difficult to grow things here in the city in Tucson. I just could not figure it out. And when I was in Phoenix, I just couldn't figure it out. So armed with all that, I'm like, this thing is growing on my breast. I decided to ignore getting a biopsy and went into probably one of the most stressful 2 summers of my life, growing hemp with my family. Rewarding, yes, tons of reward, and I love driving tractors. I love it. I love being outdoors. I love irrigating. I will get up at 5 a.m. forever to go irrigate, and I put together, yeah, it was amazing. I loved it. And it was stressful, beyond crazy stressful, especially when all the deals went bust, and for selling our crop, like so many people, small farmers in Colorado, happened to them. It was a big gamble. So we made our own little products, and I began to take the CBD, and wow, I began to feel so much better. My father uses CBD on his hip. It's fantastic. Little did I know that it's very helpful for anxiety and that kind of thing. So my son started taking our own products, and it's benefited everybody in the family. But by the second summer, the end of the second summer, I knew the thing in my breast was getting to be a big deal. It was coming out into the skin. My body was actually doing what it's supposed to. It was trying to push it out. And I did not know about Dr. Nasha's metabolic approach to cancer. I did not know that there was this thing called cryotherapy, where they can inject liquid nitrogen into the tumor and, go around it, and I would have never had to lose my breast. I was petrified to talk to anybody. And by the time I did, it was the standard, you have stage 3B infiltrating ductal carcinoma. It was in my lymph already. We're going to do 12 rounds of chemo. We're going to take off both your boobs. We're going to replace them with fake boobs. and then we're going to do radiation for 6 weeks because you're so healthy, you can do this. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, if I'm so healthy, how do I have cancer? And I intuitively know, because things I'm not telling you, for years I have these crazy headaches, crazy joint problems, and this weird thing, I called it, the thing would come and get me, and it was like every joint couldn't move. And little did I know, like all these red spots on, you can't see them now because they're going away. All those years, no, I also have lupus. And that was the weird thing that would get me. No one figured this out. I hired 4 different naturopaths that Naisha knows, but they have never taken Naisha's course. Huge, huge, huge difference. It was my 5th naturopath doctor, Dr. Jade Robbins, that I hired, that figured out that I had the lupus. She's the one, and it took a while to get me to take the nutrition genome test, but once I got that test, I think that's the #1 test that has saved my life. That's where I found out I have this histamine intolerance, and it was the histamines that have been like on top of lupus flare-ups, which is a kidney thing, and creatinine, on top of sulfur issues, on top of not getting enough magnesium into my brain, and all the genetics. I could see all the epigenetics. I just wasn't really served out. Some things are good, some things not so good. So that test, I think, was one of the single most profound tests. The other one was my Dutch test. That was another profound test. The GI MAPS test is another very telling test. It wasn't as bad as we thought, but I do suffer from some kind of, I think it's ulcerative colitis is what I have. In the end, that's what we'll name it. It doesn't really fall into the irritable bowel syndrome and the IBS, and it's, yeah. So on top of all this, my first naturopath put me on a ton of supplements, and immediately I had such severe diarrhea that I had water coming out my butt for like 10 days straight, and nobody cared. I did all kinds of stool tests. They came out normal. You don't have E. coli or anything like that. And I'm like, what is going on? So I got off all the supplements. I found and 2 weeks before going to my full rounds of chemo, I found Dr. Antonelli, who's the only one in the world who would do a surgery, and I thought that would be good. I'll just debulk. It's a debulking. Well, it was a radical mastectomy. He took my left breast off. It's criminal that his technique is not standard care for all women. I did not take a single ibuprofen. It's powerful. My markers changed. I started coffee enemas. I started intermittent fasting. But I'm noticing my mental PTSD thing is a big deal, and I didn't have access to emotions other than, complete and utter fear and I'm gonna die and that kind of thing when you get first diagnosed, especially with stage 3B. Unfortunately, I was guided to Canada. I did some treatments, hypothermia, mistletoe, high-dose vitamin C, which, by the way, no one ever tested me for the I can't remember the thing, but you need to be tested before you do high-dose vitamin C. There's a genetic thing. No one ever did that. They just threw me on. So many missing things. I can't even tell you. And even though I was stable, it was highly recommended to me to go get the couple tumors that were in my armpit that were, there were 3 lymph nodes that were still there and cancerous. Get them out, get them out, get them out, get them out. So I went back and Antonelli said, I don't want to do this surgery. I don't like doing it. You could have potential problems with your arm for the rest of your life. I was like, whatever, just get it out of me. I was tumor centric, still not terrain centric. I didn't understand the implications of pissing the cancer off to metastasize even further. So September 21st, 2020, I got my second surgery. It was a lymph node removal, and I have never recovered from that. He was right. My arm has been messed up. It's currently going almost numb. There's pain in my shoulder. I deal with chronic pain every single day. Tried to go on my trip. I start hiking. My arm swelled up and blew up with lymphedema, even though I'm getting exquisite treatments. I brush every day. I do all the lymphagogue, teas and tinctures. Pretty diligent. I'm doing hot cold therapy, but the damage has been done. So I need to work with that now. That was a learning experience. Everybody says you have your own path and that everything is a learning experience and you are exactly where you need to be. And I sometimes beg to differ with that because I'm constantly asking questions to everybody. And I tend to trust people, doctors, multiple people, and now I don't. And that has its problems as well. But now no decision is made in my world without a minimum of 5 different people's opinions, medical, scientific, researching friends, doctors from different places. I don't make a decision without it. Minimum 5 different inputs. Oncologist, primary care, everybody. Makes it difficult. So after the surgery, September of 2021, I knew something was not right. My markers started to go up. It took until January 20... No, that was September 2020 that I had the second surgery. So it was January 2021 that I finally got with a certified practitioner, certified in the metabolic approach to cancer with Dr. Nasha Winters, and that was Jade. Within 20 minutes, she figured out I had lupus. We figured out a bunch of, food things. We started down the path of detoxification on a serious level, very gentle, but what I should have been doing from the beginning. Due to my finances, I did not take all the appropriate testing right away. And so I highly, highly recommend, if you've just been diagnosed, there's initial blood work and testing. Please do not skip out on a mycotoxin test. Please do not skip out on your GPL tox test. Please do not skip out on a Dutch test. Do not skip these things, the nutrition genome. Get the tests. Get your iron levels checked. Get your thyroid panels. Get your lipid panels. Just lay it down and figure it out. Ask for as much help as you need. Get the proper testing so you know what to do and you don't waste your time. Find a practitioner Nisha has taught. Don't waste your time. By March, 2 months after I've seen Jade, I decided to investigate a psilocybin trip. So I did. I took too much. It was quite a long day. It was amazing. And that night I had a dream, and I knew the cancer. I woke up screaming in the middle of the night with the most profound dream I've ever had in my life. And the mushrooms were talking to me. And I knew the cancer was somewhere, something was happening. So I called my oncologist at the beginning of April. Insurance denied scans, which I thought was bad luck. So I was determined. I've never been so profoundly affected by a dream. So I went and got a pre-nuvo scan. It took April, May to be denied. So it was June by the time I got the scan. June 14th is when they came back and they said there's some lesions on your brain, but we don't know what that is. It took until September 18th, 2021 for it to be officially diagnosed as brain cancer. Assuming that it was the breast cancer metastasized to the brain, we will never know the truth of it. And there were 9 tumors. And within 4 days, they had me in for gamma knife radiation. And my whole life changed to a full ketogenic, low carb therapeutic diet. For real. And mind you, I've been on mistletoe for the last 2 years, injections. Doing a lot of various protocols, high dose vitamin C and ozone and, the works. So, there's that. Came out of that and it took a month and a half, 2 months to even be cognitive enough to tell people what was going on. Felt like a full failure. Like, oh my God, I didn't do chemo. I should have done chemo at the beginning. B, I'm a failure at the metabolic approach to cancer. It spread to my brain, but I wasn't really doing it. I didn't understand that another surgery could make I know it's the second surgery that made it metastasize. I was stable before that with all my cancer markers. Mind you, I don't have very high blood markers. They're pretty low. They, no indication that anything was in my brain. So then I got my follow-up 3-month MRI, and they said, congratulations, you have a 100% success rate with the gamma knife radiation. We find that with people who are following this very, very strict ketogenic diet, basically eat like the French, tons and tons of fat, and you have 11 more tumors in your brain. So we're going to go back in January 18th of 2022. So I went back, had a second one. By this time, I've had more gadolinium dumped into my body than anyone wants in an entire lifetime. And right now, I am awaiting my follow-up scan, which is going to be on Mother's Day, this Sunday, to see what happened. In the meantime of recovering, I decided to go to Georgia, get more mistletoe therapy, and more specific heat therapy on the armpit because my arm's really going numb now. I can barely use my pinky finger. I can't type anymore. Lymphedema is terrible. I did recover from the second Gamma Knife radiation 10 times faster than the first one. I think because I was doing different therapies for my body, and there was more healing for my body. I could talk about all that later. So I have sort of this dream. My boys are going back to school. My big guy is going to be in high school. They're their own little people, big people, turning into big people. And I've always wanted to go out, and I've been dealing with surgeries and this whole thing, just surviving for so many years. I never really got to do what I wanted with my kids. And that's just go bring them to all the mountain bike trailheads all over the western United States and camp and be out in the woods. So I sold my house, a rental house that I had. I bought a little camping trailer, and we launched out on our big 3-month outschooling adventure, so I can be out away from Wi-Fi, away from the city, away from, so I can ground. And when you're working with brain stuff, that's one of the biggest things, is just getting away from that. So that was my plan. And 5 days in, after hiking a ton in Sedona, my arm blew up. I mean, it didn't blow up. I mean, the lymphedema just made my arm, it swelled to 2 times the size, and we had to stop. So I've been back in Tucson for 2 weeks, recovering, reevaluating, reassessing, finishing my Train Advocate program, loving all the resources, going deep into the emotional component, recognizing that it may never be over. It's just a ride and a roller coaster. But the good news is that I am very emotional now. Immediately, I let myself grieve that I had to come home, and that in itself is a huge improvement. I laugh, I have joy. I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I'm sad. The fact that I'm feeling all these feelings is freaking fantastic. I'm gonna cry again, just out of gratitude. So now I'm gonna ask for help. And Cheryl, my friend, she's gonna come with me for 2 weeks, and I'm going to try it again next week. Trying it again. She's coming, and we're going to try to pack up and go back out into the wilderness, because I have this stinking instinct that it's the best place for me, but I just need help with my boys, preparing things, making sure I stay calmer. I need time, to sit and meditate. I'm just not gonna hike a lot. I'm gonna adjust and adapt to what I've been given. That's where we're at.